Just give us your take on what you're seeing across these markets. Is this the short-term reaction, or are we going to see more pronounced losses across the equity space?
Yeah, no, I mean, clearly things are very fluid, no? But the problem is this is now coming at a really bad time for markets, because for all this year, we've been dealing with tightening financial conditions for other reasons, no? Central banks fighting inflation. And the market has really tried to establish a growth narrative, because the only way risky assets can make progress if you have central banks tightening policy as aggressively is if you have a good growth narrative. And now you're dealing with a growth shock, which is particularly for Europe, but pretty much globally, because you are even further tightening financial conditions. Risk premia in equities and credit everywhere are going up. And at the same time, you have that sharp rally in commodities, which is implicitly tightening financial conditions. So there's a real risk the market now gets even more worried that you're dealing with a sharper growth slowdown. And I think that's kind of in the near term probably going to dominate. Generally, when we look at geopolitical risk, it often creates opportunities to kind of step in, because markets often overprice geopolitical risk because they're worried about escalation. But it's very difficult to say at this point how deep that risk-off can get.
Are we looking at stagflation as a real risk now?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely that probability will have to be repriced in markets. I think you have that commodities inflation now accelerate. At the same time, there's risk of supply chain disruptions, because Eastern Europe and some of those areas might be embedded in European companies' supply chains. I think you will have that financial conditions tightening, which weighs on growth. You have a corporate confidence shock, which might delay investment. On the positive side, Europe still benefits from the EU's recovery fund. So that means that you have a bit of fiscal stabilizer, which supports growth. But definitely the growth inflation mix is deteriorating a bit in function of that, at least in the near term.
Christian, what is your advice to investors at this point? How do you position in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, we've downgraded credit last week and upgraded cash in our asset allocation to kind of nod towards a slightly less friendly market backdrop, which is not only related to Russia, it's really related to this financial conditions tightening, which we're currently seeing and which is intensifying. And I think we still think that you want to be overweight real assets, so we're overweight commodities and equities, and you kind of want to broadly avoid nominal assets because they can't help you much in the portfolio. You see this in the last few days of risk off as well. I think the bond market doesn't have much buffer to give, so you need to look at alternative safe havens to protect the portfolio. So clearly raising cash is one way to reduce risk, but we've also looked at gold, safe haven FX, and commodities broadly being a bit of a safe haven currently, because it's at the center of this trouble.
Yeah, 2% move in gold today, Christian, almost 2% move. Do you bring forward your forecast for 2150 on gold?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that forecast is as always with gold, it has this kind of safe haven characteristic, which would definitely accelerate some of that kind of appreciation. What's really interesting in the last month is, despite the large increase in real yields we've seen in the US, which historically is a key driver of gold, like gold has done really well. It's generally been trending up and obviously spiking now in function of Russia, which tells you that positioning in gold probably has been quite light coming into the year. A lot of people were joking last year that there was a huge inflation spike, but gold was not really an inflation hedge, and it's true. But now you start to see that gold is kind of reasserting itself as a safe haven, and in particular with regards to geopolitical risk.